The letter arrived on a gray Tuesday in January 2024. Inside was one line that made Emily Harrington's knees buckle. Your new monthly mortgage payment will be £1,987, an increase of £842. She had bought the house at the absolute top, drunk on 1.4% fixed rates and the lie that prices only ever go up. Now the Bank of England had hiked 14 times, the 2-year fix was dead, and the terrace street she once thought was her forever home was suddenly worth £42,000 less than she owed. Outside, the for sale boards were multiplying like frost. Neighbors who once waved cheerily were avoiding eye contact, secretly slashing asking prices by tens of thousands. Buy-to-let landlords were dumping properties in panic. Cash buyers circled like vultures, and every morning the radio warned of more pain to come. Remortgaging cliffs, rising arrears, unemployment ticking up. Emily stood at the window watching the rain streak down the glass and realized, with a cold clarity that felt like grief, that the British dream she had chased for 15 years was collapsing around her. This is the story of what happened when the interest rate party finally ended, and an entire nation woke up with the hangover. Story: when the music stopped. Emily Harrington remembered the exact moment she believed she had won at life. It was May 2022, the day the estate agent handed her the keys to 42 Willow Crescent, Croydon. The sun was blazing, the stamp duty holiday was still half alive, and their 2-year fixed mortgage at 1.49% felt like cheating the system. Mark, her husband, carried 4-year-old Jamie over the threshold on his shoulders, while the removal men sang Sweet Caroline, for no reason other than high spirits. House prices had just hit another all-time high, and the BBC ran a segment titled, "Why the UK Property Boom Has Years Left to Run." Emily took a selfie on the front step and captioned it, "We made it." 18 months later she stood in the same spot, rain instead of sun, staring at a Halifax letter that might as well have been written in blood. Mark came in soaked from the school run. "How bad?" he asked, though he already knew. 42 grand negative equity, she whispered. And the new payment jumps in 7 weeks. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, "We're not the only ones." They weren't. Across the country, the same scene was playing out in hundreds of thousands of kitchens. The era of ultra-low rates, the era that had begun when Mark and Emily were still at university, had ended with brutal speed. 14 rates rose in 18 months. Mortgage rates that had lingered below 2% for a decade now began with a 5 or a 6. The effective cost of a new mortgage had doubled since the start of 2022. For the first time in 13 years, it was cheaper to rent than to buy. Zoopla's demand index had fallen off a cliff. Transactions were down 23% in 2021. And still the pain was only half delivered. Millions more fixed deals were due to expire in 2024. Next door, number 44, the Patels were moving out. Raj Patel had owned 5 buy-to-lets at the peak. Section 24 tax changes, EPC regulations, and now 7% interest rates had wiped out his cash flow. He was selling everything except the family home and taking a job in Qatar. "The game's over," he told Mark over the fence, voice flat. Landlords are the fall guys this time. 2 streets away, Emily's sister Clara was being evicted. Her landlord, another accidental victim of the rate apocalypse, needed to sell to cover his own remortgage. Clara, a nurse, single mom to 8-year-old Mia, joined the rental queues where properties lasted hours, not days, and rents had risen 12% in a year. "I just want somewhere stable," she texted Emily. "I earn £38,000 and I can't even rent a 2-bed. The psychology of the fall was almost worse than the numbers. Britain had spent a generation being told that rising house prices equaled national success. Front-page headlines screamed, "Crash!" every time the average dipped another percent. Politicians who had once boasted about soaring values now spoke in hushed tones about correction and soft landing, as if the market were a sick relative everyone was afraid to upset. At the school gates, conversations that used to be about extensions and loft conversions became whispered confessions. "We're thinking of handing the keys back. Extended the term to 35 years. We'll be 70. My husband's working weekends just to cover the mortgage." Emily started a WhatsApp group called Willow Crescent Survivors. Within a week, it had 30 members. They shared screenshots of mortgage offers, swapped tips on benefits they'd never thought they'd need, and posted memes of sinking ships. In March 2024, the Halifax Index showed a 5.1% annual fall, the fastest since 2009. Nationwide said 6.3%. The inflation-adjusted drop was closer to 12%. The ONS, always lagging, still insisted prices were flat. Estate agents rolled their eyes. The official data is like watching a film on a 2-second delay. By the time they report it, we've lived it. The one thing preventing an all-out collapse was the lack of supply. People simply refused to sell at a loss. They extended mortgage terms, took in lodgers, cut every subscription, anything to avoid crystallizing the fall. It created the strangest of stalemates. Demand had evaporated, but supply had too. Prices drifted down slowly, painfully, like a dying man refusing to lie down. Then came the forced sellers. In June, Emily's colleague Sarah, a midwife whose husband had been made redundant from an architecture firm, put her house at £60,000 below what she paid in 2021. It sold in 4 days to a cash buyer from overseas. Word spread. Suddenly the dam threatened to break. Emily and Mark went to see a mortgage broker in Pully. The broker, a weary man in a cheap suit, laid it out. You can fix at 4.89% for 5 years. That's £1,987 a month. Or you can go variable and pray the bank cuts next year. Will they cut? Mark asked. The broker laughed without humor. Inflation's sticky, oil's spiking again, and the old lady wants to prove she's tough after 2022. I wouldn't bet the house on cuts. Literally, they took the 5-year fix. Felt like signing a prison sentence. That summer the economy finally tipped into recession. Mild but undeniable. Unemployment nudged above 5%. Mortgage arrears, which had been almost non-existent, began to climb. Repossessions, a word nobody had uttered since 2009, started appearing in the papers again. Willow Crescent lost 3 more families. One couple downsized to a flat and rented out their house just to cover the mortgage. Another emigrated to Canada. The third simply walked away. The bank boarded up number 38 in September. Emily kept working, kept smiling at parents' evenings, but inside she was hollow. Some nights she lay awake calculating how many more years she would have to teach to pay off a house that was worth less than the debt it secured. Then, in November 2025, something shifted. Inflation finally cracked. Energy prices fell, supply chains healed, and the Bank of England cut rates by 50 basis points, then another 25 in December. Mortgage rates began with a 3 again for the first time in 3 years. The market didn't roar back. It exhaled. First-time buyers who had been sitting on deposits for years crept out. Landlords who had survived started buying again at sane prices. In January 2026, number 42's Zoopla listing, which Emily checked compulsively, showed the first monthly price rise in the area since 2022. One Saturday morning, a young couple knocked on the door holding a toddler and a Labrador. "We love your house," the woman said shyly. "We've been waiting for prices to come down. Is there any chance you'd ever sell it?" Emily looked at Mark. They hadn't dared speak the words aloud, but they both knew. The peak-to-trough fall had been 21%. Their mortgage was underwater no longer. They could move to a cheaper area, shorten the term, maybe even breathe again. She smiled at the couple. "Give us 6 months to fix the bathroom," she said. "Then we'll talk." That evening she deleted the Willow Crescent Survivors group. In its place, she started a new one. Second Chances. Outside, the first snow of the winter began to fall on a street where for sale boards were finally starting to come down. The great British housing crash hadn't destroyed them all. It had merely reminded an entire generation that some things, equity, security, the future, are never guaranteed. But sometimes, if you hold on long enough, the music starts again. Quieter this time, in a different key, and with no illusion that it will play forever.